Hi everyone, thanks for watching this story. The story is very interesting. Don't forget that I have a PlayStation 5 for a subscription. Everything is simple and easy. I still remember the first time he told me. I had no idea how to react. My brain was scrambling to piece together this absurd story, but it didn't make sense. A 13-year-old kid, a 15-year-old girl, a secret pregnancy, a hidden child? It felt like something out of a movie, not real life. I remember sitting there, staring at him, trying to process it all, but it just didn't add up. How could something like this stay hidden for so long? Matt tried to convince me, showing me pictures of the kid, and that's when everything hit me like a ton of bricks. There he was, the child, looking almost exactly like Matt. Same smile, same eyes, same mischievous grin. It was undeniable. This kid was real, and somehow, no one knew about him. Not even Matt's family. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. How could he keep something this big from everyone, especially his family? It made me question everything. Was this a betrayal of his parents, of me? Hell, maybe even of himself. But even in my anger, I still couldn't wrap my head around why the girl never told anyone about it. How was it possible that a kid, who, by the way, was 15 at the time I found out, had never met his father, had no idea who Matt was? The girl's family was rich, powerful even. They could have done anything, and yet somehow, Matt got away with it. I felt betrayed, but I also felt sorry for Matt. I wasn't sure if he was more of a victim or a coward in this situation. He had been running from this for so long, hiding it even from his own family. And now, here I was, the only person in the world who knew the truth. I couldn't just walk away from this, but I also had no idea what to do with it. I couldn't just pretend it didn't exist. And I certainly couldn't forget about the poor kid, growing up without a father, in some strange twisted story. The more I thought about it, the more frustrated I became. What bothered me the most was the guilt I started feeling, not just for the kid, but for the whole situation. Matt had been running from this for so long, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was complicit in keeping this secret. I wasn't the one who had a child, but I was holding on to something that could change everything for Matt's family if they ever found out. How could I sit on this information, knowing that his parents were oblivious to the fact that they'd been grandparents for 15 years? I started questioning Matt's decisions, but also my own role in this whole thing. Was I just as much to blame for keeping this secret? I couldn't tell anyone because I made a promise to him. But as the years passed, it started to eat at me. How could Matt let his own child grow up without knowing who he was? Sure, it was a messy situation, but the kid deserved to know. I started looking into the girl's family, the rich Ohio family. They seemed to have swept this under the rug, and I couldn't figure out why. Were they protecting their daughter? Was it that simple, or was there something darker going on? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the more I thought about it, the more I felt like Matt was just a pawn in some game played by people with money and power. The girl probably moved on, married someone else, and pretended nothing ever happened. But what about the kid? Was anyone thinking about him? This was when the anger really started to settle in. I had so many questions. Why did Matt never try to reach out? Why hadn't he fought for a relationship with his son? Why did he think it was okay to just pretend like this never happened? And how could I just sit here, knowing what I knew, and not do anything? There was a conflict in my chest, tearing me apart between what I thought was right and what I had promised Matt. But more than anything, I felt angry at the whole situation. The longer I sat with this secret, the more I realized I couldn't keep carrying it alone. But the question remained, what the hell was I supposed to do with it? On one hand, I wanted to respect Matt's wishes. He trusted me with this, and I had promised to keep it between us. But on the other hand, I couldn't help but think of that kid growing up without his father, completely unaware of him. I could tell myself it wasn't my problem, that I wasn't responsible for Matt's choices, but deep down, I knew this wasn't just Matt's mess anymore, it was mine, too. The thought of telling Matt's family was always in the back of my mind. It's like I was waiting for the right moment, but the truth is, there would never be a perfect time. I wondered what would happen if I told them, how they would react. Would they hate Matt for keeping this secret for so long? Or would they just feel sorry for the kid who never even had the chance to know his father? I also thought about Matt's own feelings. He was the one who had the most to lose here. If I told his family, if the truth came out, it would change everything for him. He might lose everything he'd built. The guilt he'd been carrying for 15 years could come crashing down on him in a way he wasn't ready for. But at the same time, wasn't that the price of keeping such a huge secret? Didn't Matt deserve to face the consequences of his actions? I felt trapped, like I was stuck between doing what I thought was right and protecting my friend from what was inevitable. But after months of wrestling with this guilt, I realized something. I wasn't just protecting Matt anymore, I was protecting myself. I was hiding behind this secret because it felt easier. It was easier to stay quiet and pretend like I had no stake in this story. But I did have a stake in it. I had watched Matt suffer in silence, and in doing so, I had suffered too. And that's when it hit me, this wasn't just Matt's decision to make anymore. If he couldn't do the right thing, maybe I needed to be the one to step up and tell the truth. So, after months of internal conflict and soul-searching, I finally decided to confront Matt. I called him up one night, heart racing, palms sweating. He picked up on the second ring. His voice was calm, like he didn't know what was coming. "Hey, man. You good?" he asked, completely unaware that his entire world was about to be turned upside down. "I'm not sure." "We need to talk," I said, my voice tight. I could hear the slight edge in my tone. It was like I was giving him a warning, but I wasn't sure he understood just how serious it was. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I started to talk, carefully choosing my words. "Listen, I've been carrying this secret for a long time. And it's not just about you anymore. I think about that kid. I think about how he has no idea who his father is, and how that's messed up. He deserves to know. Your family deserves to know." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and I could hear Matt take a deep breath. His voice, when it came, was low and strained. "Don't do this," he said, his words almost pleading. "Please. I've already been through enough with this. I can't deal with it right now. It's not the right time." It was the same response I had been expecting, the same excuse he'd been using for years. Not the right time. I could feel the frustration bubbling up inside me. "Matt, it's been 15 years, I said, the anger now spilling over. "The right time was years ago. You can't keep running from this. You can't hide from your own flesh and blood. He deserves more than what you've given him. And your family, they have no idea they've been grandparents for over a decade. Don't you think they deserve to know? Don't you think it's time?" There was silence for a moment. And then I heard him sigh, a deep, defeated sound that made my chest tighten. "I can't do this," he said again, but this time, there was no conviction in his voice. It was more like he was talking to himself, trying to convince himself that what he was doing was right. I knew then that Matt wasn't going to be the one to take action. It was up to me now. "I'm not asking you for permission," I said, my voice firm. "I'm going to tell your family. They deserve to know. And if you don't do it yourself, then I will." I didn't wait for him to respond. I hung up, feeling a strange mixture of relief and guilt. I knew I had done the right thing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just crossed a line that I couldn't uncross. I didn't waste any time. The next day, I called Matt's parents. My hands were shaking as I dialed their number. I hadn't talked to them much over the years, but I'd met them a few times when I was younger. They were kind, loving people, and I couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt as I prepared to drop this bomb on them. I had no idea how they would react, but I knew it was going to change everything. When his mom answered, her voice sounded so sweet, so innocent. It made the whole thing feel even worse. How was I supposed to tell this woman that she had been a grandmother for 15 years and had no clue? "Hi, Mrs. H, it's me. I need to talk to you about something important. Is Mr. H around?" She sounded a little confused. "Of course, honey. Hold on a second." I could hear her call out to her husband, and then the phone clicked as he picked up. His voice was warm, friendly, the usual "how you doing" tone. It felt so normal, so mundane, that it almost made me feel like I was overreacting. But I knew I wasn't. "Hey, Mr. H, I'm sorry to call you out of the blue, but there's something I need to tell you about Matt. It's important, and I can't keep it from you anymore." They both went silent. I could feel their confusion through the phone. There was a long pause, and I could tell they were exchanging glances, wondering what was going on. "What's this about, son?" Mr. H finally asked, his voice tight with concern. I took a deep breath. I had rehearsed what I was going to say a million times in my head, but now that I was here, it was like the words wouldn't come out right. I pushed past the nervousness and blurted it out. "Matt has a son. He's 15. He's never met him, and neither have you. He's been keeping it a secret from you both for all these years." There was another long silence on the other end, and I could feel the weight of it, like the air had thickened. I had just shattered their world in a single sentence. Mrs. H was the first to speak. Her voice was shaky, almost fragile. "What? What do you mean, a son?" I could hear her struggling to process what I was saying. "Where is he? Why hasn't Matt ever told us?" I wanted to say something comforting, but I couldn't. I didn't have the answers. All I could do was tell them the truth. The whole truth. And that truth wasn't pretty. He's in Ohio. The girl Matt got pregnant is from a very wealthy family, and they've kept it all under wraps. The kid has no idea who Matt is, and as far as I know, Matt has never tried to reach out. There was a long pause before Mr. H spoke, his voice quiet and heavy. "This is unbelievable. Why would Matt keep this from us? We've been good parents. Why would he hide something like this?" His words stung. I didn't have an answer. I could only guess at Matt's reasoning, but I didn't think it mattered anymore. The truth was out there, and now they had to deal with it. Mrs. H finally spoke again, her voice almost breaking. "We've been grandparents this whole time, and didn't know?" I felt the weight of her hurt. I knew I had just broken their hearts, but it had to be done. They had a right to know. They had a right to meet their grandchild. "I'm sorry. I didn't want to do this, but I had to tell you. It's time to know the truth." I stayed on the phone with them for a while longer, answering their questions, but the damage had already been done. Their world was shattered, and I couldn't undo it. When I hung up, I felt numb. I had done the right thing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just destroyed something beautiful. Matt's life, his family's life, they would never be the same again. The next day, I braced myself for the fallout. I had no idea how Matt was going to react, but deep down, I knew he'd be furious. I was prepared for a fight, for him to hate me for breaking the silence, but I wasn't prepared for the way he took it. I was at work when I got the call from him. I saw his name flash on my phone, and my stomach dropped. I knew this wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. "Why did you do it?" His voice was low, strained. There was no greeting, just pure anger right out of the gate. I took a deep breath and braced myself for what was coming. "Matt, we've been through this. Your parents have a right to know. They're your family, and you kept this from them for 15 years. I couldn't keep lying for you anymore. I couldn't watch that kid grow up without any answers. You should have stayed out of it," he snapped. "This is my mess, not yours. Why did you have to drag them into it? You think they can just handle this?" I felt the frustration building in my chest. "Matt, you think they can't handle the truth? You've been hiding this from them your entire life. From everyone. And now you're mad at me because I finally told them? This isn't just about you anymore. It's about that kid, and it's about your family. They deserve to know the truth." He didn't answer right away, and for a moment, it felt like I was talking to a wall. Then he finally spoke, quieter this time, but his words still hit hard. "I never wanted this. I never wanted any of this. You don't get it, man. I wasn't ready to face it. I'm still not. I could hear the desperation in his voice, the rawness of it. It wasn't just anger. There was fear there too. Fear of what would happen if he truly confronted this. Fear of the consequences of facing something he had buried so deeply for so long. I know you weren't ready, I said, my voice softening. But that doesn't change the fact that it's out there now. You can't run from this forever. There was a long silence on the other end. I could almost feel him processing everything, but it didn't change the fact that he was in denial. I can't talk about this right now, he finally said, and before I could say anything else, he hung up. I sat there, staring at my phone, feeling a mix of relief and guilt. I had done what I felt was right, but now I was questioning whether it was really the right time to force him into facing all of this. Matt wasn't ready. Hell, maybe I wasn't either. But what was the alternative? Let this thing continue festering, with no one ever knowing the truth? It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But for the first time in years, I felt like I had taken a step toward doing the right thing. Matt would have to face the reality eventually. The truth couldn't be buried forever. I couldn't shake the image of that kid, the 15-year-old, now a stranger to Matt, to his parents, to all of us existing out there, living a completely different life, unaware of the storm brewing. I thought about him a lot over the next few days. Matt's son was someone I didn't know, yet I felt like I knew him in some weird, twisted way. He was part of this story, part of Matt's past that was so carefully hidden away, and yet he was completely left out of it. I kept thinking about what that must have felt like for him. Being raised by strangers, never meeting his real father. Never knowing that he had a piece of his dad's DNA walking around the world. What kind of life was he living? Was he resentful? Did he wonder why his mom never talked about his dad? Did he feel abandoned, like he didn't matter? I began to realize just how much this kid had been affected by something that wasn't even his fault. His entire existence had been wrapped up in lies, all because of a decision made by two people when they were way too young to understand the weight of it. I tried to imagine what it must be like to grow up without the answers to questions I'd always taken for granted. Who am I? Where did I come from? Who is my dad? The guilt I felt started to morph into something deeper, something more intense. It wasn't just about Matt anymore. It wasn't even about his family. It was about the kid, the one who had been left to live a life defined by absence. His story wasn't even his own. He was caught in the middle of something he had no control over, a pawn in a game that was being played out by people who didn't have the courage to face the truth. I couldn't help but think about the future. How would Matt handle this now that his family knew? Would he reach out to his son? Would he try to explain himself, try to make up for the lost years? And if he did, what would the kid feel? Would he be open to meeting Matt, or would he be angry at him for not being there? How do you make up for 15 years of absence? I had no answers. The situation was too messy, too complicated. But one thing was for sure, no matter what happened next, the damage had already been done. That child was going to grow up with a story of abandonment, of neglect, whether or not he ever knew the details. And I wasn't sure Matt could fix that, no matter how hard he tried. I couldn't stop thinking about what kind of father he might have been, if only he hadn't let fear keep him silent for so long. The days after I told Matt's parents were tense. I could feel the shift in their energy whenever I saw them. There were no more casual conversations, no more light-hearted exchanges. They knew the truth now, and I could see how much it was tearing them apart. Matt's mom called me a few times, her voice always trembling. She would ask questions, but none of them were the ones I wanted to answer. How could he keep this from us, she'd ask, barely able to get the words out. Why didn't he come to us? I never had the answers for her, just more questions of my own. Why hadn't Matt reached out? Why hadn't he been brave enough to face what he had done? I could tell she was struggling to piece together the reality of it all. Her son, the boy she had raised, had kept this monumental secret from her for 15 years. And the hardest part was that she was just as in the dark as everyone else had been. It wasn't just Matt's mom. His dad, Mr. H, had retreated into himself, I'd try to check in with him, but he would always brush me off, his mind clearly preoccupied with the fallout. It was clear they were both overwhelmed, grappling with the idea that they had been grandparents without even knowing it. They didn't know where to begin with all of this, and neither did I. But the worst moment came a few days later when I had to face Matt in person. He had asked me to meet him, and I didn't know what I was walking into. Was he going to yell at me? Would he even speak to me at all? I honestly had no idea. What I did know was that I couldn't avoid it any longer. When I walked into the coffee shop where we were meeting, I saw Matt sitting at a corner booth, staring down at his coffee. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. His usual confident demeanor was gone, replaced by someone who looked like he had just realized how much he had lost. I slid into the booth across from him, and for a few seconds, neither of us said anything. The silence felt suffocating. "Why did you do it?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you have to tell them?" I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "Matt, you were never going to face this on your own. You've been hiding from it for 15 years. Someone had to make you see the reality. You can't just keep pretending it doesn't exist. It's not just about you anymore. It's about that kid. And your family." He clenched his fists, looking down at the table, his jaw tight. "You don't get it," he muttered. "I wasn't ready. I'm still not. I don't know how to fix this." "I know you're not ready," I said quietly. "But you're going to have to be. You've got a son out there, Matt. And your family, they're hurting right now. They've been blindsided by this, and you have no idea what it's like to suddenly find out you've missed out on 15 years of a life. The kid deserves answers, and so do they." He didn't look up. His eyes were red, like he had been crying. "I don't even know where to start. I can't fix this." I reached across the table and put a hand on his. "You don't have to fix it, man. You just need to show up. For him. For your parents. For yourself." The silence stretched between us, heavy and thick. I could see the weight of everything pressing down on him. He was lost, overwhelmed by what had been uncovered, but there was a part of me that still believed he could find his way through it. I wasn't sure if he would, but at least now he had a chance. "I'm scared," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "I'm scared of what I've missed. I'm scared of what I've done to him. I'm scared of how my parents are going to look at me." "I know, man," I said, trying to give him some semblance of reassurance. "But you can't keep running. You have to face it. You've got people who care about you. People who deserve to know the truth." Matt sat back in his chair, finally meeting my eyes. His face was etched with guilt, confusion, and fear. "I don't know if I can do this," he said, almost pleading with me to tell him what to do. "You don't have to do it alone," I said. "You just have to take the first step." And for the first time since I'd found out, I saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. It wasn't much, but it was something. He might have been scared. He might have been lost. But I knew that if he really wanted to, he could still make things right. It was going to take time, a lot of time, but the first step was admitting the truth, no matter how ugly it was. And I hoped that, in the end, that was something Matt could do. It had been weeks since I confronted Matt, and honestly, I wasn't sure if he would ever take the first step. But to my surprise, he called me one night, his voice wavering with uncertainty. "I did it," he said, barely above a whisper. I called him. I couldn't help but feel a wave of relief. It wasn't much, but it was everything. Matt had made that call, finally breaking the silence, and I knew that was the hardest part. I had never been sure if he could actually follow through, but he did. I don't know what to say to him, though. I don't know how to explain myself, Matt admitted, sounding defeated again. "Don't try to explain. Just listen," I said. "You don't have to have all the answers right now. He's probably got a million questions. Just let him talk. Let him know you're here. That's the first step." There was a long pause on the line before Matt spoke again. "I'm scared, man. What if he hates me? What if I've ruined everything before it even started? I could hear the fear in his voice, the same fear that had kept him silent all these years. It wasn't about the right words, the perfect apology, it was about his willingness to face something that had been buried for so long. You're going to be scared, I said, trying to offer some reassurance. But you can't control how he feels. You can't change the past. All you can do is be there now. You can't undo what happened, but you can start fresh. And if he doesn't want to hear it yet, that's okay. But at least you've started. We both sat in silence for a moment. I could tell Matt was processing everything, weighing his next move. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. In fact, it might never be easy. But at least now, there was a path forward. I'll keep you posted, Matt said quietly, his voice still unsure but a little less burdened. Thanks for pushing me to do this. I don't know what I would have done without you. I didn't respond right away. It wasn't about me. It was about him finding the courage to do what he needed to do. I was just the one who had given him a nudge in the right direction. Just do what you can, I said, my voice gentle. Take it one step at a time. That's all you can do. After hanging up, I sat there, thinking about what Matt had just done. Reaching out to his son was a monumental step, but I knew the real work had only just begun. He had started the process of healing, but there was a long road ahead. Rebuilding relationships, especially one that had been broken for so many years, wasn't going to be simple. But there was hope now. The door was open. It wasn't too late to try to make things right. And that, for now, was enough. I didn't hear from Matt for a couple of days after his call to his son. To be honest, I wasn't sure if I would. Making that first move was one thing, but facing the aftermath, the uncertainty of how his son would respond, was something entirely different. I tried not to pressure him, but I couldn't help myself. I was anxious, hoping that he wasn't retreating again, that he was still moving forward. When I finally got a message from him, it wasn't what I expected. Hey, man, we talked, the message read, short but loaded. I'm still processing everything, but he didn't hate me. I felt a surge of relief, mixed with disbelief. He didn't hate him? That was more than I had expected. After all these years of silence, to have the kid just not outright reject him felt like a victory in itself. I immediately called Matt back, and he answered on the second ring. He wants to meet, Matt said, his voice full of a mixture of shock and hope. He actually wants to meet me. He said he's got a lot of questions, but he wants to meet. I was stunned for a moment. I didn't know what I expected, maybe anger, maybe confusion, maybe nothing at all, but the fact that Matt's son was open to meeting him was a huge step. A huge, unexpected step. That's incredible, I said, trying to keep my emotions in check. You're not alone in this, man. This is huge. I can't believe it, Matt said, his voice cracking. I was sure he'd hate me. That I was too late, that he'd never want to see me. But he's giving me a chance. I could feel the weight lifting off his shoulders as he spoke. For the first time in years, there was a spark of something resembling hope in his voice. It wasn't all fixed, and it wasn't going to be easy, but it was progress. Don't rush it, I cautioned. Let him ask his questions, and just be honest with him. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to show up. I will, Matt said, sounding more determined now. I didn't know if I could do this. But now that I've heard him, I know I have to try. I don't want to be a stranger to him anymore. We talked a little longer about the logistics, where and when they'd meet, how Matt should approach it. I wanted to give him all the advice I could, but deep down, I knew that this was Matt's moment. He had to take the next step on his own, and I hoped he was ready for it. When we hung up, I sat there for a moment, letting the weight of it all settle in. For the first time in a long time, Matt had done something I didn't think he was capable of. He had faced his past, reached out to his son, and now, it was up to both of them to build something new. It wasn't going to be perfect, it wasn't going to be easy, but it was a start. And sometimes, a start is all you need to begin healing. The day of the meeting came faster than I expected. Matt was a mess, pacing around his apartment like a caged animal, talking himself in circles. I'd never seen him like this before, and honestly, it was hard not to feel a little nervous for him. After all, this wasn't just some casual meeting, it was a life-changing moment for both of them. I don't know what to say when I see him, Matt admitted, his voice shaky as he ran his hands through his hair. What if he's still angry? What if it's too much for him to handle all at once? I looked at him, trying to steady his nerves. You don't have to say everything all at once. Just be yourself, man. Be honest. Let him know that you're not running away again. He nodded, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and hope. I'm just scared. What if I mess this up? What if this is my only chance, and I ruin it? You won't, I said firmly. You're already doing the hardest part by showing up. That's more than you've ever done before. Just take it slow, and let it happen naturally. Don't try to force anything. Matt breathed in deeply and exhaled. Yeah, you're right. I've spent so long running, I forgot how to just be there. For him, for anyone. Just be there, I repeated. That's all you need to do. We didn't have much time left before he was supposed to meet his son, so we headed out. I kept my distance, knowing that this was something Matt had to do alone. I didn't want to be the one he relied on for every decision. This was his chance to finally step up and be the father he needed to be. When Matt texted me later that afternoon, I could tell the meeting had gone better than he expected. Just left. It wasn't perfect, but we talked. He said he wants to get to know me. Slowly. But he wants to try. I sat back and read the message again. I didn't know what I expected, maybe more tension, maybe some awkward silence. But the fact that Matt's son was willing to try, that he wasn't shutting the door on him, was a huge relief. It was a step forward. I immediately called Matt, eager to hear more. When he picked up, I could hear the exhaustion in his voice. We talked for a couple of hours, he said, his tone a little lighter than before. He had a lot of questions. A lot. But I think we're getting somewhere. He said he doesn't really know who I am, but he wants to change that. He said he's not sure what he's supposed to feel, but he's willing to see where it goes. Matt, I said, my voice thick with emotion. That's huge. You've made progress. He's not pushing you away, and that's more than you could have hoped for after all these years. I know. It's just, a lot. I thought he would hate me. I thought I'd never get a chance to fix this, but here we are. He actually said he wants to try. He told me that he doesn't expect everything to be perfect, and that's a lot to take in. I could hear the tears in his voice, but they weren't tears of regret, they were tears of relief. He had been carrying this burden for so long, afraid that the past was irreparable, that he would never have the chance to be a father. But today, he had finally taken the first step towards something real. Just keep showing up, Matt, I said softly. That's all you can do. Don't worry about being perfect. Just be there. I will, he said, his voice full of quiet determination. I'm not going to disappear again. I'm here. I'm finally here. And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. This wasn't the end of the story, far from it. But it was the beginning of something new. A beginning that neither Matt nor his son had ever expected, but one that might just turn out to be enough. The days following Matt's first meeting with his son were filled with a mixture of relief and anxiety. There were moments where he seemed almost lighter, like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders, but then there were other times when the reality of it all would come crashing down on him again. I checked in with him frequently, trying to gauge how things were going, but he was hesitant to share too much. It wasn't that he was hiding anything, he just didn't know how to explain the mess he was wading through. His relationship with his son was new, fragile, and still full of uncertainty. Do you think I'm doing this right? Matt asked me one night, his voice weary. Every time I talk to him, I feel like I'm fumbling. I want to make up for all the years I missed, but I don't even know where to start. I could hear the frustration in his voice. He had taken the first step, But now he was faced with the reality that fixing things wasn't going to be as easy as he thought. "You're doing fine," I reassured him. "This isn't about getting everything right away. It's about showing him that you're here, that you want to be part of his life. The rest will come with time. You've spent 15 years avoiding this. Of course it's not going to be easy." Matt was quiet for a moment. I could tell he was thinking, weighing my words. I'm scared that he's not really ready to forgive me. That he's just doing this out of some sense of obligation because I'm his dad. "You can't control how he feels," I said. "But you can show him that you're not just showing up because you feel guilty. You're showing up because you want to be a part of his life. That's what matters." "I know," Matt sighed. "But what if it's not enough?" "It will be," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "It might take time, but it will be enough. Just don't give up on him. Don't give up on yourself." In the weeks that followed, Matt continued to meet with his son. There were phone calls, awkward silences, and long conversations about everything and nothing. But there were also moments of connection, genuine, raw moments where Matt's son let his guard down, where they shared things neither of them expected. One evening, Matt told me about a breakthrough. He told me he wanted to know what my life was like before I disappeared. He said he doesn't get why I wasn't there, but he wants to understand. It's not forgiveness, not yet, but it's something. He's starting to see that I'm not just some guy who let him down. "See? You're getting through," I said, my voice warm with relief for him. "It's slow, but you're making progress." But even with that breakthrough, the consequences of the years they had lost weighed heavily on both of them. Matt had spent so long avoiding this truth, trying to pretend like it didn't matter, but now he had to face the wreckage of those lost years, and so did his son. There were still moments of tension, questions that went unanswered, anger that hadn't been fully expressed. It wasn't a fairy tale reunion. But it was real. And for the first time in a long time, Matt was showing up, doing the hard work of repairing the relationship he had almost given up on. I could hear it in his voice when we talked now, a sense of purpose, a sense of hope that had been missing before. He wasn't just trying to fix things for himself, he was trying to fix things for his son, for the family that had been waiting for him to come back into their lives. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. And sometimes, that's enough. The deeper Matt and his son got into their relationship, the more I realized that the past wasn't something you could just undo. No matter how hard Matt tried, he couldn't erase the years of absence or the pain it had caused. That reality seemed to hit him more and more as their conversations grew more honest, more painful. One afternoon, Matt called me, his voice tight with frustration. "I don't know if I can do this anymore," he admitted, his words heavy with exhaustion. "Every time we talk, it feels like I'm dredging up more and more crap that I can't fix." He's angry, and I get it. But I don't know how to get past all the things I missed. I could tell that the weight of his past mistakes was dragging him down, and I knew he was getting close to breaking. The guilt, the shame, the fear, it was starting to eat at him again. He had finally faced his son, but now the reality was that there was so much hurt to wade through. "Matt, this isn't going to be easy," I said, trying to steady him. "You didn't expect it to be. You can't undo 15 years of absence with a couple of phone calls. But you're doing it. You're showing up. That counts for something." "I know," he muttered, sounding defeated. "But every time I look at him, all I see is what I've done to him. I wasn't there. I wasn't there for his first steps, his first day of school, his birthdays. Hell, I didn't even know what he looked like growing up. How do I make that right?" "It's not about making it right all at once, Matt. You can't fix everything in one go. This is about proving to him that you're here now. You can't undo the past, but you can be present in the future. It's about consistency." "I know," he whispered. "But I still feel like I'm losing him, even when we're talking." That's when I realized something. Even though Matt was physically there now, emotionally, he was still trapped in the past. He was holding on to the guilt of his absence, unable to let go of the notion that he could somehow erase the hurt with an apology, with a perfect response. "I'm going to make it right," Matt said, more to himself than to me. "Somehow." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to tell him that everything would work out, that there was a happy ending waiting for him, that all this pain would eventually fade. But I knew better. There were no shortcuts to healing, no quick fixes. Matt had to keep showing up, day by day, step by step, and he had to let go of the idea that he could somehow undo the past. He couldn't. But he could build something new, something honest and real. It's going to take time, I said. But you're already doing the hardest part. You're not giving up. That's what matters. Matt didn't answer right away. The silence stretched between us, and I knew he was thinking, processing everything. But I also knew that he was finally starting to understand. This wasn't a battle to win or lose. It was about showing up and being there, even when it hurt. It just feels like I've waited too long, he said, his voice small. That maybe I'm too late. You're not, I said firmly. It's never too late to start. As long as you're here now, it's not too late. There was another pause, but it wasn't as heavy as the ones before. Matt wasn't fully convinced yet, but there was a flicker of hope in his voice now. It wasn't the hope of instant resolution, but the hope that he could still make a difference, even after everything that had happened. For the first time in a while, I felt like Matt was starting to truly understand what this was about. It wasn't about the mistakes he'd made or the years he'd missed. It was about the steps he was taking now. They weren't perfect, but they were real. And that, in the end, was all that mattered. It's been a few months since Matt and his son first started to rebuild their relationship. Things are still awkward, still painful at times, but there's a new sense of understanding between them. I've seen the changes in Matt, the way he's begun to accept his past without trying to bury it, the way he's learned to approach his son with patience, without expecting immediate forgiveness or everything to be perfect. We talk less now. At first, I was his sounding board, the one he called every time something went wrong, every time he had a breakthrough or felt like he was backsliding. But now, I hear from him less frequently. I think he's starting to realize that he doesn't need me to guide him through every conversation. He's starting to trust himself again, to believe that he can be a father, even after all these years. It's not a fairy tale ending. It's not as if everything has suddenly become perfect. There are still moments of silence between Matt and his son, moments where the anger from the past rises up, when questions go unanswered. But there's also a quiet understanding, a feeling that they're both trying, in their own way, to build something real. And that's enough. Matt hasn't exactly won his son's love, but he's earned something far more important, the chance to try, to be a part of his son's life moving forward. And for both of them, that's a big deal. The other night, Matt called me again. But this time, it wasn't for advice. It wasn't to vent or unload. It was just to talk about his day, about his son, about how they went to the park together and shared a conversation that didn't feel forced, that felt almost normal. I think we're getting there, he said, his voice steady, no longer filled with the panic I had heard in the beginning. We're not there yet, but we're getting closer. It's not perfect, but it's something. And for the first time in a long time, I'm okay with that. And for the first time, I believed him. Because Matt had done the hardest thing, he had shown up. Not perfectly, but with sincerity. Not instantly, but with consistency. That's the thing I've learned from all of this. Life doesn't give you do-overs. You can't change the past, no matter how much you wish you could. But what you can do is show up. You can be present in the moments that matter now, and sometimes, that's enough to start rebuilding what was broken. If you're out there, struggling with your own past mistakes, unsure how to move forward, my advice is simple: don't be afraid to show up. You don't need to fix everything all at once. You just need to be there, to try. And in time, the things you thought were lost might start to come back. It's never easy, but sometimes, it's the only thing that really matters.